Maya had always been the type of person who couldn't walk past someone in need without stopping. Her friends joked that she had a heart too big for her own good, but she never minded. That morning the air was crisp, the streets half awake, and Maya hurried along the sidewalk with a steaming cup of tea in her hand as she prepared for a long day at the library where she worked. She was running late, weaving through the crowd, when she noticed a man sitting at the base of a bus stop, his hands trembling as he tried to grasp a small paper bag that had fallen open beside him. Most people stepped around him, eyes averted. Maya slowed, watching for a moment as he struggled again, his fingers uncooperative, the bag spilling even more items, a few old photographs, a folded envelope, a tiny wooden carving, something about the way he handled the belongings, so carefully despite shaking hands, felt deeply human. Without thinking, Maya crouched down. "Do you need help?" she asked softly. Looked up, startled. His eyes were tired but warm, framed by wrinkles that carried years of stories. These are all I've got left," he murmured, voice warbling, "and I can't seem to hold on to them today." Maya smiled gently. "It's okay, let me help." She gathered each item delicately, handing them back. The wooden carving, a tiny bird, caught her attention. It looked handmade, worn by years of touch. The man noticed her interest. "My wife carved it," he said, "long time ago." "It's beautiful," Maya replied, carefully placing it into the bag. When she had repacked everything, she helped him to his feet. He winced but managed to stand. "Thank you," he whispered. "People don't stop anymore." Maya hesitated. "Are you waiting for someone? A bus? Can I call someone for you?" He shook his head slowly. No one to call. That answer hit her harder than she expected. She glanced at the clock on the bus stop and realized she was now definitely late, but leaving him alone didn't feel right. "Have you eaten?" she asked. Again, he shook his head, this time almost apologetically. Maya made a choice in that moment, one that felt as natural as breathing. "Come on," she said. "There's a cafe across the street. Let me get you breakfast, just a warm meal." The man stared at her as if unsure she was real. "You would do that?" "Of course." He introduced himself as Joseph as they crossed the street. Inside the cafe, warmth and the rich scent of roasted coffee wrapped around them. She guided him to a booth and placed an order, tea for him, a simple breakfast plate. As they waited, he told her little pieces of his story, not in a neat timeline, but in fragments. His wife had passed 10 years ago. His son had moved away, their relationship strained. Joseph had recently been evicted from his apartment after rent hikes he couldn't keep up with. He had been bouncing between temporary shelters and the street for weeks. Maya listened with the kind of attention that made a person feel seen. Joseph seemed surprised each time she nodded, asked a question, or simply stayed silent in understanding. When the food arrived, he ate slowly, almost reverently, as if savoring not just the meal but the moment. Maya checked the time again. She was already an hour late. She sent a quick message to her supervisor, explaining she'd be late due to an urgent situation. Her supervisor was kind and replied with a thumbs-up emoji and a reminder to stay safe. When Joseph finished, she offered to help him find a shelter with open beds for the night. He smiled at her, a fragile, grateful smile. "You've already done enough," he said, "more than anyone has in a long time." Maya shook her head. "I don't think kindness should have a limit." For the first time, Joseph laughed, a sound that carried warmth beneath years of hardship. They walked outside together, and she pulled up information on the nearest shelter. Before they parted ways, Joseph pressed the wooden bird into her hand. "My wife would have liked you," he said. "She always believed one moment of kindness could change someone's whole life." Maya was taken aback. "I can't take this. It's yours." He closed her fingers around it. "Now it's yours. A thank you." She didn't know why, but the gesture lodged deeply in her chest, leaving her breathless. She watched him walk away toward the shelter, the morning sun hitting his figure like a quiet blessing. She tucked the little wooden bird into her pocket before heading to work, unaware that helping him that morning was only the beginning of something much bigger, something that would soon turn her world upside down in ways she never expected. Maya couldn't stop thinking about Joseph throughout the day, even as she reshelved books, helped students find research materials, and answered mundane questions. Each time she slipped her hand into her coat pocket and felt the tiny wooden bird, warmth bloomed in her chest. She hadn't expected his story to stay with her so strongly, but kindness had always been like that. One act often rooted itself deeper than she realized. When her shift ended, she found herself walking toward the shelter Joseph had headed to earlier. She told herself she just wanted to make sure he arrived safely, but as she approached the building, doubt crept in. What if he thought she was intruding? What if he didn't want to see her? She almost turned around, but something inside her nudged her forward. Inside, the reception area was quiet. A volunteer at the desk looked up and smiled. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for someone who might have checked in this morning," Maya said. "His name is Joseph, older gentleman." The volunteer typed quickly, then paused. Yes, he was here earlier, but he left about an hour ago." Maya felt a flicker of disappointment. "Did he say where he was going?" The volunteer hesitated. He mentioned needing to take care of something important. He didn't say what, but he seemed lighter than when he arrived. Maya smiled softly and thanked them before stepping back outside. The sky was streaked with orange and purple, the sun dipping low. She looked around, wondering where Joseph might have gone. After a few minutes, she finally headed home, the wooden bird still clutched in her hand. That night, she placed the carving on her bedside table. Its tiny wings looked poised to take flight. She found comfort in its presence, as if it carried a piece of someone who had endured much but still believed in goodness. The next morning, Maya awoke earlier than usual. She brewed tea, slipped the bird into her bag, and stepped outside into cool air. Something felt different, as though a path invisible before had begun to reveal itself. At the library, things started normally, until her supervisor approached her mid-morning. "Maya," he said gently, "there's someone asking for you at the front desk." Her eyebrows knitted in confusion. She wasn't expecting anyone. She walked to the desk and froze. It was Joseph, but he looked different. Cleaner, more put together, his posture steadier, his eyes brighter. "Maya," he greeted warmly. "I hope I'm not troubling you." "Troubling me? Of course not," she said, recovering quickly. "Is everything okay?" He nodded. "Better than it's been in years." She guided him to a quiet table. As they sat, Joseph took a deep breath, as if preparing himself. "I didn't tell you everything yesterday," he confessed, "not because I wanted to hide anything, but because I didn't trust myself to speak it." Maya listened patiently. "You see, I wasn't just evicted. I had given up," he said quietly. "I'd lost my home, my family connection, my health, and my hope. Yesterday, when you helped me, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, like maybe I wasn't completely invisible." Maya felt tears prick her eyes. "The shelter isn't perfect," he continued, "but they connected me to a social worker. I have a meeting this afternoon, and I wanted to give you an update because you cared." Maya exhaled shakily. "I'm so glad, Joseph. Truly." He smiled gently. "But that's not the only reason I came." He pulled something from his jacket pocket, a photo. It was an old picture, faded around the edges. A young woman with kind eyes held a baby, smiling softly at the camera. "This is my wife," he said, "and that baby is my son. I wanted you to meet them, in a way." Maya held the photo with reverence. "She looks lovely, and your son, he's adorable." Joseph nodded. "His name is Daniel, and I made a decision last night to reach out to him again. We've been estranged for years, but watching you, I realized people can surprise us. Maybe he'll answer, maybe he won't, but I'll try." Maya placed the photo gently on the table. "I think that's a beautiful step." Just then, Joseph's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his eyes widened, his breath hitched. "It's him," he whispered. He replied. Maya's hand flew to her mouth as Joseph stared at the message, trembling, not from frailty but from overwhelming emotion. "I can't read it," he said, voice cracking. "Would you?" He slid the phone across the table. Maya hesitated, then picked it up. The message was short but powerful. "Dad, I'm so glad you reached out. Can we meet?" She looked up at Joseph with a bright, emotional smile. "He wants to see you." Joseph's face crumpled as years of pain melted into disbelief and hope, and Maya realized in that moment that she had witnessed the beginning of a life changing, not just his, but hers too, in ways she could not yet name. Joseph's meeting with his son was scheduled for that afternoon at a small cafe near the city park. When he told Maya about it, he looked torn, grateful but nervous, hopeful but terrified of what the reunion might bring. Maya could see the internal war behind his eyes. "Do you want me to come with you?" she asked gently. Joseph thought for a moment. "Would you?" "I don't want to impose." "You're not imposing. I'd be honored to be there," she assured him. He exhaled in relief. Then, "Yes, I'd appreciate that very much." After her shift, she and Joseph walked together to the cafe. The sky was heavy with clouds, but the air held a strange stillness, as though the world knew something significant was about to happen. They arrived early, settling into a quiet booth near a window. Joseph fidgeted, smoothing the front of his jacket as if trying to make it look newer than it was. Maya offered him a steady smile. "Whatever happens, you've already done the bravest part." He nodded, though nerves still tugged at his features. Minutes passed. People came and went. At exactly 4:02, the bell over the cafe door jingled, and a tall man stepped in. He had his father's eyes. Joseph froze. His breath left him in a sharp, almost pained gasp. Daniel scanned the room until his gaze landed on Joseph. Their eyes locked. Recognition, sorrow, love, distance, all wrapped into one fragile moment. Slowly, hesitantly, Daniel approached. "Hi, Dad," he said softly. Joseph swallowed hard. "Hi, son." Maya stood. "I'll give you two some space," but Joseph reached out and gently touched her arm. "Stay, please." His voice was barely above a whisper. She nodded, sitting back down. Daniel sank into the seat across from them, his eyes flicking between Maya and Joseph. "Dad, who is—" "She's the reason I'm here," Joseph said simply. Daniel offered Maya a small nod. "Thank you, truly." Then silence settled over the table, thick, emotional, almost suffocating. Finally, Daniel broke it. "I didn't think you'd ever call," he said. I thought you didn't want me in your life." Joseph shook his head quickly. No. I loved you. I always loved you. I made mistakes. After your mom passed, I didn't know how to be anything anymore." Daniel's jaw tightened. "You pushed me away." "I know." Joseph's eyes filled. "And I'm sorry. More sorry than I can say." Daniel looked down at his hands. "I was angry for a long time. You had every right to be. But when you reached out today, something told me to come." Joseph let out a trembling breath. "Thank you." The conversation began to unfurl from there, slow at first, then gradually gaining momentum. Maya watched quietly, only speaking when Joseph seemed overwhelmed. Daniel asked about his father's situation, his health, the eviction. When Joseph admitted he'd been struggling for years, Daniel's expression cracked, grief flickering across his face. "Why didn't you tell me?" he whispered. "I didn't want to be a burden," Joseph replied. "I thought you'd moved on, built your own life." Daniel blinked, eyes glassy. "You're my father. I never stopped caring." The weight of those words settled deep. For the first time in years, Joseph allowed himself to weep openly. Daniel reached across the table and took his father's hand. The sight crushed Maya's heart in the most beautiful way. Then Daniel looked up at her. "I want to help him, get him back on his feet, find him a proper place to live, but he trusts you. Would you be willing to help us? Maybe guide him through the process?" Maya was stunned. "Of course, I'll do whatever I can." Relief washed over Daniel. "Thank you. I don't think I could do this alone." Joseph squeezed his son's hand. "You don't have to." For another hour they talked, about memories, regrets, hopes for the future. When they finally stepped outside, Daniel insisted on driving Joseph to a temporary apartment he had arranged. "Just for a few weeks," he said, "until we get something better." Joseph looked overwhelmed, as though kindness from so many directions had left him breathless. Before they parted, Joseph turned to Maya. "You didn't just help me," he said softly. "You restored something I thought was gone forever." Maya felt her eyes burn. "You did the hard work, Joseph. I just stood beside you." As Daniel drove away with his father, Maya watched them disappear down the road. Something deep within her stirred, a sense that her life had just shifted, that she had stepped into a story she didn't yet understand. And though she walked home alone, she felt anything but alone. The weeks that followed unfolded in ways Maya could never have predicted. Joseph's life began to transform rapidly, piece by piece, step by steady step. Daniel kept his promise, helping him secure medical checkups, a caseworker, and a small apartment in a safe, quiet neighborhood. Joseph went from surviving to slowly living again, and through it all he insisted that Maya remain part of his journey, and she did, gladly. She visited him after work, sometimes bringing groceries, sometimes helping him sort through paperwork, sometimes just sitting with him as he told stories about his wife, or showed her old photographs he had once tucked away in sorrow. Over time, those photographs returned to frames, placed around his apartment like revived memories. One chilly afternoon, Joseph called her unexpectedly. "Maya," he said, excitement and nerves tangled in his voice. "Can you come over? There's something I need to talk to you about." She arrived within half an hour. Joseph sat at the small dining table, a cup of tea waiting for her. He looked healthier, color in his face, strength in his posture. "What's going on?" she asked, taking a seat. He took a deep breath. "I got a letter today from the community center." Maya raised her brows. "A letter?" He nodded, then slid the paper across the table. She picked it up and began reading. Her eyes widened. "They want you to speak at their event?" she said, stunned. "About homelessness awareness?" Joseph nodded again. "They want me to share my story, to talk about what it's like, and how one act of kindness helped change everything." Emotion swelled in his eyes. "I don't know if I can do it, Maya, but I want people to understand that anyone can fall, but also anyone can rise again." Maya felt her throat tighten. "I'll be there. Every step of the way." He smiled softly. "I was hoping you'd say that." Over the next week, she helped him prepare, writing notes, practicing his speech, organizing thoughts that had long been tangled in fear and shame. Each day he grew stronger, more confident. On the night of the event, the community center buzzed with people. Students, volunteers, city workers, families. Maya sat in the front row as Joseph stepped onto the stage, his hands trembling only slightly. He began speaking slowly, voice wavering, but it didn't take long for him to find his footing. He told them about loss, about loneliness, about falling into circumstances he never imagined. But then he spoke of kindness, of a moment on a cold morning when someone stopped instead of walking past. He didn't use Maya's name, but the way he described her made the room fall silent. "She reminded me," he said, "that I was still human, that someone still saw me." Maya pressed a hand to her heart. When he finished, the room erupted in applause, loud, warm, sincere. Joseph looked overwhelmed, but in the best way. Afterward, people came up to him, asking questions, thanking him for speaking, offering support. Maya stood beside him, watching pride bloom across his face. For the first time in years, he was being seen not as a burden, not as a man beaten by life, but as someone resilient, brave, and worthy. As the crowd thinned, Joseph turned to her. "Maya, I need to tell you something." She tilted her head. "What is it?" "It isn't just my life that changed because of you," he said. "Yours did too. You opened a door that changed your direction, even if you didn't realize it at first." Maya blinked. "What do you mean?" He gestured lightly around the room. "All these people, the work you helped me with, the compassion you've shown. You were meant for more than a quiet life shelving books. You're meant to change lives, not just mine." The words struck somewhere deep. She never thought of her kindness as anything extraordinary. She simply did what felt right. But now, hearing Joseph speak it aloud, she felt something awaken, an idea she never imagined for herself. "I don't know," she whispered. "I do," Joseph replied, "and so will the world one day." Before she could respond, Daniel approached, smiling warmly. "Maya," he said, "Dad's right. You've done so much, and we'd like you to be part of our lives, not just as someone who helped, but as someone who matters." Maya's eyes softened. "You both matter to me, more than you know." When she finally walked home that night, the wooden bird Joseph's wife had carved rested again in her pocket. Only now it didn't feel like a symbol of someone else's past. It felt like a sign of her own new beginning. Helping a stranger had changed his life. but it had also changed hers, quietly, profoundly, forever.